back to Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host, Aradia, daughter of your main host, T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. This week will be the mechanical backdrop of what the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was, and next week we will get more into the tragedy itself and the human impacts that the event had on the whole nation. This topic has been promised by us for a long time, and will by no means be an exhaustive look at this very famous incident. But we are both very eager to get into this topic we've been anticipating for a while. And it is appropriate that we are recording and releasing this in March, the month of the fire. But before we can get to the fire itself, we have to understand what was happening before the fatal spark landed in the lint basket. We are also going to talk about what a shirtwaist is, the importance of cleaning your lint traps, the evolving definitions of whiteness in the United States in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and connect the dots to modern industrial accidents that are frustratingly identical. Mercury!
Mercury and Gatorade. Mercury in retrograde. If you're having trouble with your especially computerized sewing machine, now we're in that 3 times a year Mercury retrograde period, which interferes with electronics technology. I mean, I was looking forward to being on the air. Well, not on the air. Recording a half an hour ago, but various forms of technological knots and snarls in the bobbin case of the gods.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed my tech being extra buggy over the last few days, but also conversely, my ability to communicate and get ideas out always improves in a Mercury retrograde because I was born under a Mercury retrograde. So for me, communication always goes great, but the rest of the world is less on board. So it's always a fun dichotomy that my communication is at its best when everyone else, particularly the technology we use to communicate, is at its worst. But that's just me.
You know, the fact that you're a podcast producer and podcaster and so intimately involved with the world of electronics and communications and born in a Mercury retrograde, I guess you have a note from the gods. Don't mess with the cause.
I've got a hall pass for this one. Because this is a mother-daughter sewing podcast, which means, yes, we are astrology girlies.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And you were just talking about going and seeing our astrologer for a reading. It's this weird wizard dude that lives up in the woods. We're not kidding. He's off-grid in so many ways. And, of course, there are cats. So much to talk about. It's March. We're recording now in March, the early part of March. You might get to hear this by the end of March. In any case, 115 years ago, in March, in the United States, in the New York Garment District, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire happened.
We're going there.
Now, a lot of people have heard of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, and most of them don't ask the question, what's a shirtwaist?
Yeah, what is a shirtwaist? It sounds like something a theater girly would know about.
We're going to set aside all the human and labor and immigration parts of this story for part 2. Today, I want to talk about just the reality of factories in the 1890s, 1900s, in the era of peak sewing machine. Not only do everybody have one in their home, lots of people work in factories at sewing machines. And a lot of people have heard the term sweatshop, and they kind of get it that it's a sort of a tough factory environment, maybe, and you kind of get the overall idea that it's something a long time ago and there's lots of women and sewing machines. But what the hell's a shirtwaist?
Right. When I think sweatshop, I think of how all of my clothes come from places like Bangladesh and Pakistan. And like when I hear sweatshop, or like there was that factory collapse that happened in, was it Bangladesh? Like,
my God, you're getting ahead of me.
But like, that's what I'm saying is like, when I think sweatshop, I think of foreign sweatshops. I think of sweatshops elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't think of the United States, aside from, your stories of working in near sweatshop type conditions. But like, when I think of like nasty, cramped sweatshop stuff, I think of anywhere but the US. This is back in the old days.
I don't know if who else had sweatshops, but the New York Garment District was the queen of sweatshops. And when I joke about working in a sweatshop, I am joking. I worked in two places where we did commercial sewing, and the biggest one had 12 employees, and we all ate lunch together, and the boss was pretty cool. So
yeah, it's something I associate with us exploiting other countries, not with something that we do here.
but there was no air conditioning, and the roar of sewing machines was constant. So there's that. And there were workplace injuries, but we had OSHA. But why do we have OSHA? Because people died in factories in working conditions. It was a thing. I mean, people have always died earning a living, getting run over by horses out while they're plowing and whatever. But the whole factory system introduced a whole new set of dangers. I think last time we talked about factories at all was in the precursor. Well, we talked about Kilbowie, and that's a jump ahead. That's different. That's a whole different factory. I'm talking about sewing factories, not, and they have sewing machines in them, but that's not where the Kilbowie. And I was just informed, rabbit hole, that it's pronounced Kilbowie, not Kilbowie.
Oh, Kilbowie.
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 Because I've been saying Kilbowie, like with bow, right?
Yeah, emphasizing the O, but we got to emphasize the L in kill.
Kill.
Okay.
Kilbowie. Kilbowie.
Thank you for the correction, kind listener.
We have a listener in Scotland who actually lives very close to there.
Really? Cool. Well, I'm sure that was painful to listen to. I'm very sorry.
especially my terrible Scottish accent. I was talking about haggises and stuff. Anyway, so that was a factory that was purpose-built to make sewing machines.
A lot of lessons had been learned by the time that one was designed. They were like, okay, based on all of these mistakes we've made, let's make something that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start from scratch there. So, but the last time we talked about factories before that was when we talked about the precursor machines. And we just kind of touched on power looms and stuff. In Lowell, Massachusetts, another rabbit hole, they've got an awesome museum, interactive museum about the United States textile industry. We have to go there. We have to plan. I mean, Lowell, Massachusetts is the textile town. And they had a whole exhibit on the girls that went to work there and how they lived in boarding houses and all that to keep them pure and clean. And so that was the water wheel age, all the factories on the fall line using the powered water. Then steam engines came along. Now, I'm going to talk about my brother again, the brilliant mechanical genius that I mention here a lot, fueled by Busch Light. We started talking about early factories, and then we got on the subject of, well, how was all the machinery powered? And you see pictures of old factories, even things like shoes and clothes and stuff, and they've all got smokestacks. Why? What was the power? This is before electricity. The power was burning coal in boilers. It created steam that turned machinery that was hooked to these things called line shafts. Line shafts. Huge steel shafts that ran out of the powerhouse, which is the building where the smokestack and all this stuff is. The engine house, the powerhouse.
The mitochondria of the factory, one might say.
Yeah. And it runs line shafts, which are these big turning shafts that go into the various factory buildings. Huge turning things. Think like ship propeller type shaft.
Okay, just absolutely massive.
Yeah, we're going to put a picture of this in for our Patreons here for the episode.
Okay, just a big long metal stick just rotating with a stupid amount of power behind it.
Picture, just in your mind, a lot of us have seen the movie Titanic or some other movie with an engine, big engine in there, and it's turning a shaft. So that's your line shaft, and line shaft goes into a building. You'll also notice that all these old factory buildings have tons of windows.
Yeah.
They're 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 stories tall. Remember, no electricity. Got to have light for the workers.
And potentially ventilation.
Yes, that too. So the line shafts are usually up near the roof. and they are circled with all different sizes of pulleys. These are solid pulleys, not ones that you spin. They're attached to the shaft. They're different sizes, and then there's belts that go from the pulleys down to individual machines or to other line shafts that are maybe going a different direction.
Distributing the energy through and down and in different directions.
Yes. And I read a really cool, there's this engine, I got on so many cool engineering sites. And of course, when I had that crash, I lost all my bookmarks. Yeah, this is a great picture. I've got lots of links for you factory geeks here. The website is core77.com. How did factories get power to their machines before electricity? Subtitle, OSHA would not have approved of the line shaft system.
It does sound a little bit exposed, spinny, unstoppable momentum type stuff.
So this is by Rain No, and it was written December 15, 2016. The Industrial Revolution and the world's first factories predated electricity. How is it possible that a machine shop could run in an age when you couldn't just plug a machine into a socket? The answer is miles of leather belts. Factories had their power source, whether it was a steam engine or a water wheel, rigged up to drive huge rotating shafts called line shafts. These were suspended overhead and festooned with pulleys. Belts ran from these pulleys down to the factory's machines or to intermediary pulleys driving more belts or shafts. The line shaft, this is the part that got me, the line shaft was the power strip of its day.
The power strip of its day. Right? Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense because you just plug in and you're good to go. Is there an opening on the strip for me to plug my computer charger into, yay or nay? That makes sense.
And there were stationary pulleys that you could throw the belts off onto to stop your machine. Now you could take it off. Now this is how sewing machines worked at the time.
Sure, yeah.
The shaft is running usually between the machines down near the floor. The few pictures I've been able to find, I'm still looking. And just like when I was running commercial machines, it's a clutch system. The first kick of the foot pedal declutches the machine so you can actually turn it. The second notch engages. So the machine's flywheel, the thing is turning here and the machine engages with it. So there's a clutch, just like a clutch in a car. So there you are sewing along, and it's a treadle that you run with your left foot. And treadle meaning you don't go up and down. It's just the same shape as a treadle. It's a big flat platform. And your left foot pushes that, and your right knee moves the presser foot up and down to turn your work.
Oh, so you're not having to take your hands off the work and waste precious seconds on all that finagling. Okay, that makes sense from a commercial efficiency standpoint.
That's what I miss most about commercial machines.
Yeah.
It's the knee lift. And there's some Berninas, some domestic Berninas that have that. And there is a version of the 201 that can be run as a commercial machine that has a knee lift. It's called the 1200, and it doesn't have the pot motor, just all the cool mechanics. But anyway, so that's how looms and machine shops, meaning, where they're turning metal into making it into things. Any place where you've got machines that rotate, this is how they rotate. They're all belted up to line shafts.
It's all about water power, whether it's liquid water in terms of a water wheel or it's gaseous water, water vapor in form of steam. Either way, if you can harness the power of H2O, you don't need to gosh darn electricity. You can still have an industrial revolution.
Then first we had water wheels, turning line shafts. Water is falling at a very constant rate. And when it speeds up or slows down, not all at once, right?
Yeah, it's not herky-jerky. Water will go in a very smooth kind of curve. Even if it is going to rise or fall, it will be a smooth transition. Unless you have like a catastrophic flood, and that's, a whole other kind of problem.
Right. Yeah, and the water wheel wasn't just sitting itself in the river. There was usually what's called a mill race.
Right. Every little town out here has one.
Yeah, we still have mill race in Eugene. It's not got anything on it, but back at the time it had cotton mills, grain mills. Eugene had an active mill race.
Oh, yeah, no. When I was going to college, and the mill race threaded through the town. I had to cross over it a bajillion times if I wanted to go anywhere.
So that's the old power strip of a town. That's the old grid right there. If you were on the mill race, you're good.
Yeah, you follow it through Google Earth. I got lost a couple of times finding a mill race in some town in the Willamette Valley and just kind of following it around, being like, this is such an inconvenient piece of infrastructure to the modern town. But clearly it was very important once upon a time because people put it here. This is not a thing that existed naturally. People built this, and now it's a total, it's a weird sink of mud and blackberries and whatever. It's gross, but
Ducks.
People used to want these things, and they used to be coherent and connected, and it's a trip. The power strip of a town instead of those square,
it's the power strip,
humming gray places that are all like bzz, 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 which you see those in every town. It was a mill race. It was a duck-filled canal.
That's what brought the power. That was, why cities were built. American cities were built where they were until we got electricity and trains, which is why the east half of
power and transportation.
Yeah, the east third of the country is all laid out on water courses, and the west half is laid out on grids and mountains if we have to.
Which we don't always.
Please blast that sucker.
Yeah, no, that's super, super true. And also, fun random tangent, water laws follow the same pattern. The water laws in the West and the water laws in the East are very, very different. And I forget a lot of the actual terminology right now because it's been several years since I studied this, but I took a whole class in college where that was the teacher's entire thesis was you have to understand that water rights and the way that they are defined and articulated very much changes when the West opens up, and it basically perfectly maps to when we go grid with the railroad defining things, and it's just a lot of stuff maps to the same contours no matter where you look.
Oh, and we're making a pilgrimage back to that where that started.
We are.
This May, we're going to go put Mom in the ground at the family cemetery in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which was where the Transcontinental Railroad started. And that's also kind of the dividing line between the farmland and the plains. Western Iowa, the Missouri River. Across the wide Missouri. Yeah,
and it's also where we changed how we looked at water rights and how we looked at water allocations for dealing with the far more arid conditions that we found in the West.
In the West, the saying is, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over.
That's rough. But it's true.
As a part-time Arizona resident, when the Colorado River dries up, Arizona's done. We call the Colorado River Arizona's West Coast because we've dammed it up so much. It's just a long series of lakes, but with no snow. Good thing we don't run water wheels, but we do run Hoover Dam, which makes electricity.
It's still about water power. Even when we've moved on to electricity, it's still water power.
Okay, so
back on topic.
Back to the 1700s.
Sorry, digression.
Factories are being turned. No, it all ties back in here. And then on May 10th, 1876, the crowd held its breath as President Grant and Emperor Dom Pedro of Brazil started a massive coreless engine. And this is at a World's Fair, Centennial Exposition.
Sure. Naturally. That sounds like a World's Fair sort of event.
The unveiling of the coreless engine, that was a steam engine, in 1876 was equivalent to the release of the iPad in 2010.
Sure.
The coreless engine was not just a demonstration piece. Through a system of shafts and underground tunnels, it directly powered 800 machines at the Centennial Exposition. So this is a United States Centennial Expo.
Wow.
One of the other things that was on display there was the brand new invented telephone. The steam engine was hardly new technology. It had been in practical use since the early 1700s. And then they talk about steamboats and how much progress had been made. The Corliss engine had been used in steamboats, and it describes we're going to put a link to it. But the idea of having this huge engine was that, hey, what if we don't put it in a ship? What if we put it in a building and use it to power machinery? Oh, so this is where you get the powerhouse. Instead of the water wheel, now you've got this building with a smokestack and probably a rail spur that brings coal, and it's running boilers, which are spinning line shafts, because we don't have electricity yet. Pretty soon they'll spin generators which make electricity, but we haven't got that far. We're actually just using the spin, the mechanical power itself. It still has to go, we burn stuff, fire and water and air. Oh, it's magic.
Dark magic.
So we've got this engine. But how is an engine different than water?
It can catch things on fire?
Think of treadling. You're not spinning. You're putting an oscillating back and forth movement into rotary stuff. Right? The water is just running one speed. This engine has to dunk, 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 back and forth. The pistons have to go up and down. And every time they're at the bottom dead of their spin cycle, the power is gone for a minute. Think of when you're treadling, or when you're bicycling.
Yeah.
You've got your power stroke down, and then you push your foot back up, and that foot has lost the other foot is pushing, right?
Right.
So think of your feet riding a bicycle as a 2-piston engine, which is what a Corliss was.
Okay. I can see that.
Old locomotive, back and forth. That's like pistons on either side. Steam. So the reciprocating piston steam engine, okay. Power looms were not designed for that. They can't jerk, 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 jerk.
Right.
The line shaft cannot jerk, jerk, jerk. It's got to run smoothly.
Right. Of course.
How do we do that? Think of your sewing machine.
Belts and gears and stuff.
The heavier the flywheel, the smoother the stitch. Remember when we talked about the difference between treadle and electric machines?
Right. Yeah, you can really soften out that jerk by having a bigger thing to move.
Yes. You smooth out that kinetic energy cycle. Like when I used to be a bicycle fanatic, I would use toe clips. Anybody who rides a bike. And that way you can use your whole circle, not just push, push, push. You push, pull, push, pull, push, pull with each leg. It's much more efficient. Da-da-da-da. How do we smooth that out in an industrial setting? Well, we need a flywheel. This is where it gets dangerous. It doesn't sound dangerous.
Oh, well, you said bigger, heavier. That always increases the stakes, too.
Let's talk about the Amoskeag Mill disaster of 1891.
Oh, I haven't heard of this one, so I bet I'm about to be horrified.
Okay, so this is Amoskeag Mills in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is one of the fall line states. So they probably got started using a water wheel. Don't know. 9:30 in the morning, October 15th, 1891. Again, we're in that golden age of industrial, let's make more, bigger, faster. He went hunting for his engineer at the mill. What was going on with the steam power? The delivery of power from the great shaft that ran mills 4, 5, 7, and 8 had been erratic all morning. One shaft running 4 mills. Mills meaning they're full of power looms and spinning stuff. So we're talking Titanic propeller level shaft here.
Just as industrial and massive and 1900s as it gets. No, 19th century as it gets.
Yeah, 1890. Yeah, 19th century. Can I count?
1800s, 19th century. We have a horrible naming scheme.
Big mustaches and puffy sleeves.
Exactly. There we go. The era of the mustache.
Yeah. So the engineer says, I don't know, I'll go check it out, in appropriate mustachy language. And with that, he headed for the pit that housed the power plant pit that housed the power plant on the ground floor of mill number 7. That were his last words. Moments later, the mill exploded. The Amoskeag mills number 4, 5, 7, and 8 were powered by a coreless steam engine. Okay, so Amoskeag Mill naturally ordered one. Installed in 1883, it could deliver 2,000 horsepower. At Manchester, the factories were powered by water from the Merrimack River diverted to turn shafts that drove the equipment. The river worked in conjunction, so they were using both sources of power. Lift gates opened or closed to keep the right amount of river power running so the coreless didn't run too fast. At times of low water, the engine could run exclusively on fuel. The belts on the flywheel of the engine could be slackened or tightened to keep the engine from spinning out of control or overheating. They went down, checked it out. They realized the belts were overheating, but they didn't know why. I've seen these things. They're leather. They're like a foot wide. They're just incredibly massive. After asking Bunker to check out the power plant, Gordon stepped into the tunnel that ran between the mills to return to number 5, where the inconsistency of the power had been slowing the work of the carding machines. Those are things that are carding wool. He'd halfway down the tunnel when it blew apart. Seconds before the failure, an assistant engineer had looked through a window into the engine room and noticed the flywheel turning at an excessive speed. Sparks flew from the 42-inch wide main belt around the wheel. Holy crap!
Wow. Wow, that's big.
In the moments before, the power supply was getting more and more unstable. Carding machines were stopping. Looms on the north side were operating too fast. The looms shut down as they reached dangerous velocity. So, what the hell's happening, right?
Just alarm bells across the board. The machine is screaming.
The impact of the disaster could be felt throughout the wheel. What happened? The flywheel flew apart.
The flywheel itself.
Flywheel itself. Okay, what the hell? So then we have to learn a little bit about flywheels and what caused the disaster. Okay, so flywheel. The flywheel, okay, picture this, 64 tons.
Okay, that's a lot of weight.
64 tons.
That's like so many elephants.
It's so many elephants. Where's that history? Anyway, basically, they did not understand that casting these huge flywheels, which evened out the power from whatever the power source was to the machinery it was running, the flywheel was that thing in there that held all that power and distributed it. It was the engine. It wasn't just a wheel. It's holding kinetic energy.
It's a battery, almost.
It's a battery. Now, if you don't understand metal fatigue and cracking and metallurgy and faster, better, bigger, more, faster, better, bigger, more, pretty soon, and when you let that much energy go,
so it shattered outward under its own tensile strength from spinning?
Exactly.
Oh, shit.
And this happened a lot in those old mills, old factory flywheel mills. Amoskeag was the one everybody heard about because, again, it's like an uncontained engine failure on a jet engine.
So there's just pieces of metal
like
flying in every direction. Well, not every direction, in a very specific disc of direction.
Miles. Shrapnel. Buildings. The factories were not built to contain that sort of thing. The whole factory would come apart. Everybody's trapped in the wreckage. Luckily, the powerhouse is over there. Whatever. But first of all, they would put it right in the factory. Then they decided, let's put it in the powerhouse. But even then, when it came apart, everything came apart. And nowadays, when I was reading about all this, it's like, that's a jet engine failure. Uncontained engine failure, everything sprays out, cuts everything up. We know about, they didn't have x-rays. They didn't know about metal fatigue, and you didn't shut them down ever. it costs too much manpower and time and energy to start them up again. So once you got a wheel in your factory, it just ran and ran and ran
until it shatters.
Now, what happened with the erratic speeds on the Amoskeag one? What was causing that? Tension on the belts wasn't right. If they're too tight or too loose, they're going to run. They're not going to pull the thing as it's supposed to, and they're going to slip, and it's going to cause heat.
So some kind of maintenance pilot error in the belt.
Right.
Specifics.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wish I could find this page that I was on. It was talking about we didn't even understand how much the flywheel was the engine that ran the factory. I mean, it was the battery, like you said. It's where the power came from. Line shafts are attached to, it runs a big shaft, and then all the shafts come off of it. So whatever's running it, an engine, a water wheel, combinations thereof, it's the flywheel itself that's powering everything. It just took me a long time to grok that, and that's why we're going to put tabs for you guys to look at.
That's really amazing. So not only are regulations written in blood, but the kinds of R&D necessary to even come to grips with those regulations, the need for that is written in blood. The enforcement is written in different blood than the R&D. Like, wow.
But it's like, how fast can we spin this? More, bigger, better, faster. And the flywheels there are verified accounts of 200-ton flywheels. Well, the Amoskeag was only 64.
Wow. That's so many elephants.
Okay, so how were they made? They cast them in pieces and bolted the pieces together.
Yeah, I can see so many things wrong with that.
So anyway, what does this have to do with sewing machines? In the fact that next time you run your treadle, if you've ever tried to take the wheel off and just spin it with your hand, it's really hard. But to put a hand wheel on, and now you've got like 5-6 pounds, you can do what I do and put another 8-pound magnet on the outside of your treadle, and it will give you insane punching power. And it smooths out that gap in the treadle when you're turning an oscillating motion into a rotary motion. So there's your mechanical engineering thing. So what does that have to do with Triangle Shirtwaist? And were they running line shafts, and did their belts catch fire? And no, they were running line shafts. They were in a big building. They were on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floor. I have been looking all over to find out what their power sources were. They were not running electric motors yet. They were running some electric lights, though. I've watched a couple of made-for-TV dramas, and one of them shows frayed wire as the cause. But it's most likely been surmised that it was smoking by one of the male employees. Male employees were cutters. Women were stitchers. Smoking was forbidden because one of the big dangers, let's veer off on an exit ramp slightly here, one of the huge dangers of any kind of textile mill or factory is lint.
Because it has a very high surface area and it floats around. And when you have high surface area floaty things like flour or lint in the air, any spark can turn into a chain reaction that is very quickly an inescapable problem.
Oh, yeah. Grain dust.
Yeah.
Lint.
I've learned about this in so many different contexts. I can recognize the signs and I'm like, oh, that's a high surface area item. Oh, dear.
So I haven't heard of any actual factory things that started that way, but lint was uncontained and it coated everything, and it was in drifts on the floor. And another thing, textile workers were right up there with miners having respiratory problems.
Oh, of course. Yep. Fine particulates in the lungs.
This was even when I was working in the fabric store, and every year fire department would come and check our extinguishers and just look around and generally be manly in a store full of women, which is always fun. He would say fabric stores scared him a lot, and ours in particular, because it had no sprinklers. The reason was it had been 6 different stores and none of them matched the square footage to have sprinklers. And when they combined it all into a big store, it was, quote, quote, grandfathered in.
Oh, that's...
And he also said, how often do you guys change your HVAC filters? And I said, we don't do that. The Valley River Center does. That's the air quality. He says fabric stores are the worst for clogging their filters up fast.
Because of all the lint.
So I want each and every one of you, if you use an electric clothes dryer, go clean your lint trap, poke things down clean that, not just the part in the dryer. But lint is something I carry a baggie of in my car for emergency fire starter. It's because what you said, what flammable small surface area,
large surface area,
it just, like you can't light a log on fire, but sawdust is pretty easy.
Right, exactly. It's a whole mathematical equation about surface area. It's like literally, if you just think about how much surface area does this thing have, you will understand why fires start the way they do, or don't, depending on the fuel source.
Okay, so here you are in a factory everything's coated with lint. You're sewing, what's that really popular fabric right now? Cotton.
Cotton.
Oh, but what the hell's a shirtwaist?
Yeah, I've been wondering when we're going to get back to the initial question. What the hell is a shirtwaist?
It's cotton. It's a lightweight blouse. It comes in a million different shapes and styles and colors, and it's just a fad thing. You don't wear it with a corset. It's part of the new look for women. But shirtwaists are starting to go out of style. And a lot of factories seem to have insurance fraud fires when they have inventory to get rid of. So, was never proven.
This is all ringing a bell from when I listened to the Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff episodes about this. Or maybe it was Behind the Bastards. I don't remember. But a lot of what you're saying is ringing bells, because I'm guessing you found a lot of the same sources.
Oh, yeah, and I lost most of them here.
Because this is a well-litigated historical event.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, I gotta go re-listen to those, because this is... Oh, everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I knew that. I remember. That's a picture in my head.
Okay, so this link, I found this one again. Yay, Smithsonian. Awesome. Horrific tragedies in American manufacturing history. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. 146 people died, mostly immigrant women in their teens and 20s. Found jammed in narrow staircases behind locked exit doors. A flimsy fire escape that had collapsed, and utter confusion. And then he goes on to talk about all the different movies and things that have been made about it, and about the trial, technicality. A similar fire 6 months earlier at Wolf Muslin Undergarment Company in nearby Newark, New Jersey, with trapped workers leaping to their death, failed to generate similar coverage or calls. Reaction to the Triangle Fire was different. More than an industrial disaster story, the narrative of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire has become a touchstone and often a critique of United States capitalism. This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in our city, points out a labor leader. So Triangle, unlike other disasters, became a rallying cry for political change. The victims of the tragedy are still celebrated as martyrs at the hand of industrial greed. And it goes on to point out, you should read this article, hyper-competitive garment industry. What is a sweatshop, and what was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory like? Triangle was not a sweatshop by the standards of 1911. What is rarely told and makes the story far worse is that Triangle was considered a modern factory for its time. It was a leader in the industry, not a rogue operation. It occupied about 27,000 square feet on 3 floors in a brightly lit 10-year-old building. Triangle had modern, well-maintained equipment, including hundreds of belt-driven sewing machines mounted on long tables that ran from floor-mounted shafts. So you're hearing about that.
Right.
What the Triangle loft spaces lacked, however, was fire protection. without laws requiring them, few owners put them into factories. She's talking about sprinklers. 3 weeks prior to the disaster, an industry group had objected to regulations requiring sprinklers, calling them cumbersome and costly. In a note to the newspaper, the group wrote that requiring sprinklers amounted to confiscation of private property. Ooh.
You freaking greedy. Ugh.
Perhaps of even greater importance, the manager of Triangle Factory never held a fire drill or instructed workers on what they should do during an emergency. Fire drills were not common in 1911.
Man.
What kind of sewing machines did they have? Now we know that a shirtwaist is a lightweight cotton blouse that can be worn without a corset. It's very fashionable, especially among the new working class women, but it's going out of fashion. Court testimony attributed the source of the blaze to a fabric scrap bin, which led to a fire that spread explosively, fed by lightweight cotton fabric and lint. Like many other garment shops, Triangle had experienced fires previously that were quickly extinguished with water from pre-filled buckets that hung on the walls.
Fire extinguishers in the old days.
Oh, but check this out. The owners, Blank and Harris, dealt with fire hazards to their equipment and inventory by buying insurance, and the building itself was considered fireproof and did survive the fire without structural damage. Workplace safety, however, was not a priority for the owners. Workmen's compensation was non-existent at the time. Ironically, the nascent workmen's compensation law passed in 1909 was declared unconstitutional on March 24, 1911, the day before the Triangle Fire.
Wow.
So at the time that this happened, there was a pretty big labor movement going on. And this was sort of pun intended, the spark that kind of lit the fire for more worker protections, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there was a lot of different approaches to labor protections that people were pushing for. And then this high profile case is like, okay, all right, this is how we're making this push forward.
Yeah. The Triangle Factory Fire was truly horrific, but few laws and regulations were actually broken. The owners were accused of locking the secondary exits in order to stop employee theft. Outdated building codes in New York City allowed business owners to use high-rise buildings in new and unsafe ways. In the past, tall buildings warehoused dry goods with just a few clerks working inside. Now these buildings were housing factories with hundreds of workers. What few codes existed were woefully inadequate and under-enforced. So it was the wrong kind of building to have that many people in it.
The building was new and fireproof and fancy and not built for the population of workers that they were using.
Now, this was a big deal in the early part of the century. There have been so many terrible mass fires, especially in theaters, in places that just that had a lot of people, but no way to get out. The Iroquois Theater fire hadn't happened too long before that. 600 and some people died. The building was fireproof. It's still there. It's still in use. Same with Triangle. The building itself was fireproof, and insurers would give their clients, oh, we'll insure your building. We don't care about the workers. You can always get new ones. They're coming off the boats. They're coming off the boats by the hundreds.
That's the wildest thing, is that human labor is actually very cheap under so many circumstances. Human labor is actually one of the cheapest, most important, but also cheapest parts of all of these schemes and machines of death.
Especially if your workers are women.
Yeah.
They have no rights. Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, the less rights and humanity a person is assigned by the state, the cheaper their labor is.
Especially at Triangle, most of the dead and most of the people that worked there were recent immigrants of Italian and Jewish origin. So not only are the immigrants, they're the wrong kind of immigrants.
Right. They don't speak the right language. They don't have the right religion.
Both of those groups were not considered white at the time.
Yeah. Right. They were excluded from whiteness at the time. They had to...
Yeah, white is not a color. It's a class.
Yeah, they had to work their way into whiteness over the subsequent generations. This is still before the transition has happened. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when we get to talking more about labor and who was in there, I want to kind of stick to the building right now. So what kind of machines were they using? There's hundreds of women using hundreds of machines.
That are all running off of the same shaft magic stuff from down
Right,
below. They're
right.
all running off of the same machine. They're not doing treadle stuff on their own. It's all one power.
No, one power. And they're clutching in and out of the power on their own. The machines aren't just constantly running. You clutch in and out of them. But they're not all using the same machine. There's straight stitch machines. There's buttonhole machines. There's overseaming, different stations, different types of machines. And I went and looked at Singer Sewing Info UK at all the machines that were available at that time. Let's see. Here's like the 47W64. Has a vertical trimmer, so machine stitches and trims in one operation for work in light to medium weight leather, ball bearing, roller, presser foot, and drop feed. 47W62. Plain presser foot and drop feed for stitching shirts and linen and cotton underwear and other general items in light to medium weight fabric. Okay, so it just goes on, and I look at some pictures of these, and they're like, okay, that's for one thing.
Right. These are not your all-purpose home machines. These are industrial specialty machines, and you're moving a basket of shirts from one station to the next so they can go through the process.
So when people ask me, I want to buy an industrial machine, I'm like, do you want to buy a 69-9 for barring fine buttonholes, attacking bows and ornaments onto shoes and clothing?
Very specifically? Is that what you're looking for?
Or is what you're asking me is, will it sew leather?
Yeah.
Do you want a general all-purpose straight and zigzag machine that runs on a power motor and can punch through your finger before you can say, fuck? If you're asking me about that, I'll give you a few, there's tons out there. Industrial, though, it's an industrial machine does one thing. It does it well. It does it fast. It does it over and over and over and over again and does not break. It usually has an oil reservoir, or person comes around and oils them on a regular schedule as they're being used. It's a whole different thing than the domestic machine. And most of these sweatshops ran, I don't know that they ran 24/7. Like I'm saying, the flywheel ran 24/7.
But they were powered, people would leave their stations, declutch from the machine, and it would just be spinning into the night.
I don't know, I want to find out more about the life cycle of a factory. What has to be done, how much coal does it go through? How do they oil the shafts? That kind of stupid, nerdy shit. So there's people at every type of machine here. There's one made for TV, 1979 movie that I watched. I'll put a link to because it's on YouTube and it's free. And it's really good period piece. All the clothing, the factory interiors, it's fake flames and not how a real fire behaves.
Oh, sure. But the sets are period correct.
The sets are period correct. There's lots of shots of machines on fire and thread and the cutting, how fabric would burn. I mean, there's a lot of real fire in this movie.
So they found a lot of old warehouse materials that they could just film burning and be like, look, here's a bunch of material science. Yeah.
Absolutely. But, there's scenes where people are running and there's fire around them, but there's never a scene of anybody with fire on them. And how they handle the people jumping out. They show people jumping out and then they show the reaction of the people looking, but you never see.
It's tasteful.
There's no gore. It's tasteful. And there's a lot of cultural stuff in the movie that explains who the people are and why you should care about them. But the sets showing the machines and stuff, I recognized a couple of early Singer models, I think 31-15. But the scenes where they're showing racks of thread and flames, and it's real flames and real thread, I'm going, ah!
Yeah, someone found an old storage unit or 5 of stuff that had just been hoarded and
they're an old abandoned garment factory because there's tons of them.
Right. Totally.
When overseas manufacturing undercut U.S., there's tons of abandoned garment factories on the East Coast that still have drifts of buttons in the corners and stuff.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's really sad. We need to take a textile field trip to the East Coast.
Seriously. But the boys can go on their food tour and we can go thrifting.
Oh, we can go thrifting and go look at textile history. And
sightseeing, more accurately.
Yeah. So then that takes us to nowadays. Because why did that factory even get by? Well, because the Sears catalog had pages and pages and pages of shirtwaists for $1.50, all these different varieties. Who's making these? And people would rightly realize, wow, I couldn't sew that myself for anywhere near that cost. How can it possibly be made that way? And it would be explained away by, the things are cheaper when you buy like 100 bolts of the fabric instead of just 3 yards. And people are sewing just piece at a time. What you got to look at is a building costs X, the machinery costs X, Y, the insurance, everything that you've got that are fixed costs. Where can you wiggle? You can wiggle in the cost of your materials and the cost of your labor, which is what we're seeing today with our cheap crap fast fashion made out of shit fabric sewn by people that are you mentioned Bangladesh earlier, and that
factory collapse. It wasn't a fire, it was a collapse that I'm thinking of.
Well, there's been so many. The one I'm thinking of is a fire.
Okay. The one I'm thinking of is a collapse because the pictures were so striking. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens a lot because you keep because that's the one way thing you can do with buildings is you can overstuff them.
Yes. And I'm not finding that link right now, but it was 2012. And it was a few years before the collapse you're talking about. And the one you're talking about is, again, it was like a building that is designed for something else. And then they added onto the top and then packed it full of heavy machinery. And all the vibration of the machinery. And the thing it wasn't, again, locked doors, no building codes. Let's get these women in there working and let's pay the building inspector $20 to not come over today.
Yeah, and I mean, even for the cheapest, most casual of clothes, like literally, so I have a victory to tell you about. Saturday, I began and finished another pair of like cozy pajama pants out of a pair of sheets, actually Grandma Sharon's sheets.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, on her birthday. You posted about it being her birthday, and I went into the sewing room, and in, about 5 hours, I managed to make another pair of pajama pants with, the notes from the last pair I made about making, this, that, and the other different and better. And I'm currently wearing them right now. And it took me like 5 hours. It was a very pleasant way to spend, a good chunk of my Saturday. And I was really proud of myself for getting it done. And, not the entire day, but it is a very simple pair of pants. And if I were going to get paid to do that, these would be very, very expensive pants.
Oh, yeah.
Very expensive. Like 5 hours. But if I went to, Bimart or Fred Meyer or whatever to buy them, they'd be like $10.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wouldn't have good pockets.
No. What did I do sewing this week? I have like a bunch of UFOs, which is unfinished objects that have been sitting around waiting for, I just need to put the button on that or this or that. So I sat around and listened to aviation podcasts and sewed on fasteners. Okay, I'm talking about the 2012 Dhaka Garment Factory Fire, 24 November 2012. 117 people dead, 200 injured, making it the deadliest factory fire in the nation's history.
Wow.
The cause of the fire was not totally determined, but is presumed to be caused by an electrical short circuit, the cause of 80% of factory fires in Bangladesh. Now, that takes us back to how do you power your factory?
Right.
Okay, so now we've got a line shaft and this and that. Okay, well, now we have electricity. So each machine can have its own motor, right? Even if it's still a heavy-duty clutch motor, each machine has its own motor. And now what do we have? We actually have a power strip. We have a big-ass power strip running down the whole factory. And all the machines are plugged in. And how many machines and how many amps and how many watts and what gauge of wire. And we're going to pay Bob's brother $40 this time to look the other way. And, electrical safety, electricity is so safe, but you have to follow the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, it gets out and it hurts people.
Electricity is very uncompromising. It's much like a computer. It does exactly what it was told to do. Which means that if you left a crack in your instructions, it will exploit them.
Yeah. Oh, and also, over in that part of the world, if you want electricity, you climb up on the pole and you tap into the wires and you get it.
Pictures of the electrical systems from that part of the world are intimidating.
Yeah. The fire was presumably caused by exposed wires, started on the ground floor of the 9-story factory, trapping the workers above. Because of the large amount of factory and yarn and lint in the factory, the fire was quickly able to spread to other floors, of course, which had no sprinklers, no emergency exits. Of the building's 3 staircases, all 3 led to the ground floor, making them unusable. So basically, people couldn't. Same thing as Triangle. You're in this big brick oven full of awesome fuel with no way to get out.
Right. It's just a chimney with creosote in it. You're just in a chimney fire now.
Yeah, because and who really causes this? It's like the drug cartel problem in Mexico. If Americans didn't have such an appetite for cocaine, there wouldn't be such a problem. But people who shop for price and, I'm going to get the best price. Well, the Dhaka fire, a lot of the clothes there were bound for Walmart. Walmart was contracting with this company. And it is not just Walmart. It's any place. If you see really, really cheap clothes, and you can tell, and look at where it's made. Is it Pakistan, Bangladesh, Mozambique, other countries that are in the global south? It's not. I was looking at a promised fair trade place the other day, and their prices are realistic because they really are fair trade and organic. They're not selling stuff cheap. So if it sounds too good to be true, it is, unless it's at a thrift store. You know what labels you're looking for. Sometimes you could find some of that expensive organic spoon-fed by Tibetan nuns high in the Himalayas for $2.99 plus your senior discount.
Yeah, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, but there is greater and lesser degrees of unethicalness. There are red flags. There are red flags you can avoid, but it's always a compromise.
Yeah, you got to get out of binary thinking. Don't think, I fell off the wagon once, so I guess I'm just going to eat the whole damn chocolate cake. No, I had a bite of chocolate cake. I'm throwing the rest in the garbage. Oh, well, I bought a T-shirt online. And it's made in Bangladesh. Yeah, but the message is fuck ice, and I'm going to wear it downtown. So, you got to just weigh this shit out. You can't be perfect. You just can't. You just can't. You can do the best you can, and you can invite other people to join in, and let's go thrifting and look for really cool clothes and
And to return to your drug cartel cocaine analogy, the problem is not that people in the U.S. like to do cocaine. The problem is that the U.S. government decided that they wanted a cut of the action.
Oh, well,
that's the problem.
That's true.
The regulatory and legal powers that be are the ones that set us up to have the options we have. It's management, right? They don't ask us what color we want the walls. Yeah. They ask us if we want red or blue. They never give us the option of green. So, if coke and other drugs were legal, if it was regulated, if it was taxed, if it was moved around in ways that are recognizable from like toilet paper and milk and every other product, it would be a very different landscape. And the people who are rich the way they are now would not be.
Yeah. Yeah, you're entirely right. It's, there's a demand and various forces have inserted themselves in the middle of the customer and the supplier, and they're extorting both sides. Hey, we want our cut.
Yeah, they're convincing us that we need new clothes, and they're making it so that way the clothes we buy fall apart faster so that we do need new clothes. And they're also making sure that we need 2 jobs in order to keep any semblance of a roof over our head. So we're willing to sell ourselves out to whatever, the conditions could be different. The conditions could be different. Partially it's up to us as consumers, and partially it's up to us as voters, and partially it's up to us to, deal with rich people the way they need to be dealt with.
The more you don't buy, the less.
Thrifting is about the best ethical consumption under capitalism. You're still engaging with money, but at least you're getting Pendleton that Pendleton doesn't get any money for, so to speak.
Well, Pendleton sweatshops don't get any money for it, yeah. Back when Pendleton was actually sewn in Pendleton, Oregon by a bunch of little gray-haired old ladies whose husbands drove log trucks, that was different.
Yeah, well, But does that exist anywhere anymore?
It does, but people don't want to pay the price for it. They don't want. There are ethical shops out there making good stuff, upcycled dead stock fabric, but the prices are realistic. And this was on sale at Target.
This is what I'm saying about the red flags. Is it's like if it's too cheap to be ethical, then you make a difference. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's no ethical consumption, but like you get what you pay for. You do get what you pay for. And often this stuff's way higher quality. Like the idea that getting it cheaper is the same product. No, it's not. It's really not.
Exactly. I spent, like 8 years ago, I bought a dress from one of the super organic, made in Nepal, vulture shit kind of awesome places. This dress is still, it's been through the washer and dryer a zillion times. It's good fabric and it was well made. There's some parts on the shoulders that are starting to rot just from UV. There's nothing wrong with the way it was made. And the company is packed, P-A-C-T, and it's all organic and fair trade and shit, but this stuff's not cheap. And it's not trendy, and it doesn't come in every size, but it's good stuff. So instead of having lots of clothes, you say your budget's $200. Instead of buying 6 or 8 tops at Target or Forever 21 or whatever, buy one at an upscale consignment store or something. You know what I'm saying? You got to get away from the more, better, different, new, keep up. And it's really insidious, people. I'm a willing target of targeted ads. Sometimes I click buy now. And then, I got to think, no, that was not really a good idea. So last night I'm having clothing anxiety. I have a trip where I have to go to a strange culture. And last time I was there, every time I've been there, I've been made fun of for my clothing choices. And already 2 months ahead of time, I'm having clothing stress. So I almost clicked on some polyester shit, and I didn't. Yes, I did.
Good job.
I did. The last thing I bought online was the Chinga Ice shirt.
Which is excellent. We support that message.
It's made in Vietnam, which they actually do have some. But anyway, factories. And another thing, when you're sewing in your sewing room and you get all upset because it looks handmade, good for you.
Good.
It doesn't look like it came from a factory.
Badge of pride.
Oh, the buttons aren't going to fall off. The serging isn't just kind of flying off the seam in his face.
So true. Sometimes I get clothes that they're just not quite finished yet, and I call them IKEA clothes. You gotta just finish assembling them at home. A button falls off within the first, year of wearing it. It's like, let me just fix that. Let me just finish putting that together. It just wasn't quite done yet.
That almost was an idea. And it works for quilts. Pre-cut kits work for quilts.
Sure. Yeah.
But for people's bodies, they don't. A pre-cut thing, that's why ready to wear is such a false promise. Nothing ever fits. Nothing ever fits right off the hanger. And if it does, it was an expensive garment and it actually came in 18 petite,
Right. Yeah. No, making this pair of pants on Saturday was so nice because I actually had notes with the pattern from the last time I made it.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I want to change this and I want to change that. And I had actually already redrafted the pattern pieces to have, more ass, essentially, because the leg to ass ratio is not correct to the original pattern. I needed to adjust. And it's been really nice wearing the new pair of pants because they feel the same as the old pair, right? Because it's the same set of sheets, right? It's the same soft, it's the same color. But sitting down in them is much more comfortable. Also, I have 2 pockets instead of 1 pocket on the wrong side. Instead of trying to get the pocket on the right side, I was like, what if I just put pockets on both sides? Then it doesn't matter if I got it wrong because there is no wrong. Haha. But, it fits me. It's the right legs. It's the right pockets. It's the right waist. It's the right hip. And yeah, it was a way better way of spending half my Saturday than whatever else I was going to do.
Yeah. You could not buy a thing like that in a store. Because you're short and voluptuous, and that's not in a store. It's not made.
And it's made out of my grandma's sheets, so I think of her whenever I wear them.
Yeah.
And the thread was from I don't even know where, but it matched exactly. I have exactly the same color of thread, just because I have a bajillion things of thread I've been given.
It's just like, so we do what we can when we can. where we can. And I'm going to give, okay, here's your call to action. I've been thinking, what's the kind of thing that you could make for somebody? I mean, there's pot holders, right? But what's like a no-size, easy thing to make? And I was watching more airplane travel videos the other day. You can make custom suitcase, where it goes around the suitcase handle and either snaps or Velcros of all kinds of pretty fabric. Instead of just tying a thing on your handle to mark that's your suitcase.
Oh, so then it looks like it's yours. Yeah.
And for even more security, okay, sew it on. Forget the Velcro and the snaps.
Yeah.
Make yourself a really cool suitcase handle. So that's what I'm going to do today. I got to make sure to leave a little hole, though, for the little pushy button. I'm not used to these rolly suitcase things. I keep rolling it around in the trailer because it's like,
I love my rolling suitcase. It's such a brilliant idea.
Oh God, my last trip to Alaska 2 years ago, and I'm like carrying a suitcase through SeaTac, and I'm like, this is stupid. And I'm looking at everybody with their little rollers. So I got one at a thrift store for $15, and it's purple. So I got to go through my stash and find a piece of fabric for a handle.
Yeah, I make one flight a year, or I did for several years, and I literally bought a purple one off of Amazon. It was one of the last things I bought on Amazon new, because I wanted to know it would be the right size and the right color.
Yeah.
And I felt like such a dingbat for it, but it's purple.
Mm-hmm.
I love that suitcase.
That's why this looked familiar to me. I went to the Goodwill and I looked, and it's like all these biffed up black ones, and then, oh my God, purple. And I got it down, and it looked just, so one of the inside's pockets, the zipper's got a tear in where it goes to the lining. So that's like, quote, what's wrong with it? Somebody didn't want to sew that up. And I looked it up. It's $175 brand new. It's some
Lord
foo-foo brand that like top choice of travel crews and frequent flyers. And so I get on my thread, and 5 minutes later, it's fine.
Wow. So yeah, no ethical consumption under capitalism. However, sometimes we can eke things along in a way that makes us feel good.
I'm born in late June, so my sign is the crab, and I really relate to that whole bottom feeder thing. Whatever falls down to the ocean floor, yeah, I'm on that. All right, folks. Don't bottom feed with your needles. Don't use dull needles. Don't use bent needles. Throw them away. Don't use them. Needles are consumable. Stock up when you find them in thrift stores. You rarely do, so just bite the bullet and buy some needles already. Okay, and with your new needles, stay ready.
And there you have it, part 1 of our 2-part exploration of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. We talked about industrial factory power, water rights, flywheels, the concept of regulations, immigration, and how sweatshops haven't changed anything but their location over the last 100+ years. I mentioned in the water rights section that I had actually studied this in college but had forgotten the terminology. A quick swing by Wikipedia reminded me of the basics. In the eastern United States, the rule for water rights is riparian, meaning that it follows the waterways across the landscape. In the western states of the U.S., we have a rule called prior appropriation, which is fancy legal speak for first come, first serve. So essentially in the East, water is considered part of public nature, like the commons back in England. And in the West, water is considered a resource that can be privately owned and controlled, which according to that wiki entry is a reflection of Spanish and later Mexican laws. So that's an interesting angle of understanding how those different spheres of colonial cultural power interacted. Fascinating. My college professors did not mention that angle. Anyway, back to the point that this tangent came from. I guess that's really all I had to say, since it seems like the concept of a mill race as a town's power strip transcends the geographic division between riparian and prior appropriation water rights. Anyway, I did check what podcast I was thinking of all that I had heard this on before, and sure enough, it was a Behind the Bastards episode from several years ago. So do check that out if this episode wasn't already upsetting enough. You'll find lots of references and links in the show notes for further reading, in addition to that podcast reference. Next week will be even more distressing as we get into the actual disaster itself. But alas, sometimes we have to face uncomfortable pieces of history in order to understand where we've come from and how to move into the future with lessons learned. Mom and I both have a macabre fascination with disasters and love to talk about this stuff together. But if that isn't your speed, then never fear, we'll be back to tension mechanism drama eventually. As a tease for some of the content next week that is not distressing, I can tell you that there will be some actual family history overlapping with the Triangle story. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine. You can reach them at srvsew@gmail.com. Follow us on social media and YouTube. You can best support us by sharing the podcast with your friends. You can even get ad-free episodes by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/used2sew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.